Good morning to all of you. Welcome to Utah Valley University, to our Global Spotlight event for the day. My name is Baldomero Lago. I'm the Senior Director of the International Multicultural Studies here at Utah Valley University. It's an honor for me to be with you, and especially it's an honor to recognize our special guest, Keiko Fujimori. I want you to know, just before I introduce Keiko, I want you to know that the Global Spotlight on Peru has been one of the most successful experiences that we have had in the academic component for the university for the past years. We have been able to actually cover 34 events throughout the academic year, ranging from different aspects of academia as well as cultural events, working closely with the community, and it has been a learning experience for all of us as well as for the community. Before I proceed in introducing our guest speaker, I would like to recognize a couple individuals sitting here among the audience. Senior Vice President Jeff Olson, it's an honor for us to have you with us. Also, the Chief of Staff of the University, Rafael Montero. There you are. Also, we have other deans. Dean Fossen is with us as well. And from the state, we have Senator Luz Robles Escamilla. We're grateful to have a senator with us, and thank you very much for coming today. Of course, the most important half of the orange is Keiko's husband, Mark. Would you also stand up? Mark Villanova is Keiko's husband, as I mentioned. What a wonderful opportunity it is for us to more or less close this Global Spotlight year by having a good friend, Mrs. Fujimori, with us. Just for your information, you all know probably Mrs. Fujimori, but just to give you a little background about her, and I'm just going to go briefly because, of course, you are here to listen to her. But Mrs. Fujimori has a degree in business administration from Boston University and a master's degree in MBA from Columbia University. She was the First Lady of Peru from 1994 through the year 2000, and she was the youngest First Lady of the Americas at age 19. She is also the president of the Children of Peru Foundation, known as Fundación por los Niños de Perú. And she served in that capacity until the year 2000, and also the founder and president of the Peruvian Child Cardio Foundation. And I also want you to know that she has been a congresswoman elected with the highest vote in the history of Peru through the time of 2006 through 2011. She also ran for the office of president back in 2011. She became the second place of the Peruvian presidential election with 48.7% of the national vote. She lost the elections by 2%, and she's the first female presidential candidate to enter a runoff election. Currently, she is the president of political party Fuerza Popular, the largest and most important political opposition party. She is currently the leader of the opposition in Peru, and for the past 3 years, she has been leading the polls towards her president nomination that she will unfold and launch during the summer. She is married to Mark Villanella, that he is also a graduate from Columbia. That's where they met back in 2004. And Mrs. Fujimori, she is the mother of 2 lovely daughters, Kiara, 7 years old, and Kaori, 5 years old. I also want you to know that the format of the event today is we're going to give Mrs. Fujimori approximately 30 minutes to present her message, and then we're going to turn the event to a question and answer, so feel free to come up with some questions for her, anything current or whatever you have in mind. And one of the things that I'm going to ask the audience is we have another event at 1 p.m., so we will leave this venue probably 10 minutes prior to 1. So if you want to help us cooperate with that, we have a very tight schedule throughout the day. We also invite you to an evening event at 7 p.m. in the classroom building, room number 110. That event will be with the Peruvian community. There is rumbles already everywhere throughout the state of Utah. We expect a large crowd at that event, again, 7 p.m. in the classroom building, and her message will be in Spanish. Without further ado, believe me, it is an honor. It is a privilege and an honor to introduce Mrs. Keiko Fujimori. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff Olson, Senior Vice President of the University, Fidel Montero, Senator Luz Escamilla, thank you for being here today, Baldomero Lago, Senior Director of the International and Multicultural Studies, and all of you, welcome and thank you for being here today. For me, it is a great honor to speak here today at Utah Valley University, at the ending of the year named Peru. And as a Peruvian citizen, I appreciate all the events that the university has organized about my country. And of course, the interest that all of you have shown in learning more about Peru. I would like to tell you a little bit about the history of my country, how it was, how it has changed, how it is nowadays, and what is the Peru that I dream about. To understand the evolution of the country, we will need to travel through time. So let me start the story through time. On July 28, 1821, Peru became independent from the Spanish regime and began its Republican period. Since then, we had approximately 59 presidents, and there has been an alternating succession of civil and military governments. One of the latest military governments of Peru was the General Juan Velasco Alvarado, who in 1968 overthrew the government of Fernando Belaúnde Terry, with phrases and justifications like, "The land belongs to those who work it," entering with a peasant vindicating speech, which was, of course, very well received by farmers and the working class at that time. But at the end, when we look at the results, his program brought more poverty and agricultural regression in our country. In 1988, in Alan Garcia's government, during the hyperinflation crisis, when I was 13 years old, and I just started high school, I used to go with my mother to the supermarkets to buy milk for breakfast. And we used to wait really long lines to buy few cans of milk. Then the whole family also have to go to buy provisions for the week. They used to sell, and the Peruvian community and the ones that are here might remember, they used to sell 1 kilo of rice or 1 kilo of sugar per child. So that's why it was very important that the whole family used to go to the supermarket. All middle class and low-income class families had to go to this terrible experience. Peruvians lived in the late 80s, waiting in lines and afraid. At that time, in Peru, there was a terrorist organization known as Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path. This horrendous group started in Ayacucho, hanging dead dogs on the poles of that city. And then they grew towards the capital. Sendero Luminoso had ways of instilling fear, murdering policemen and government officials, such as mayors, prosecutors, as well as the general population. More than 25,000 Peruvians were killed. Simultaneously, we had to face the blackouts. The cities suddenly will turn dark. And why did the blackouts occur? It was caused by the bombs installed in electrical towers by the terrorists. In the late 80s, Peruvians of my generation, I will be 40 years old this year, used to study with kerosene lamps and candles. The more fearful attacks happened when there were car bombs all over the city. You could be sitting in a restaurant or being at a movie theater and you could hear a bomb exploded. The Tarata attack, when they detonated powerful bombs in Miraflores in the center of the capital, showed us the magnitude of the progress of Sendero Luminoso, which aimed to take government power by force. In 1990, the destiny of Peruvians was threatened by two uncontrollable factors: a deep economic crisis, hyperinflation that reached 7%, and widespread terrorism commanded by their leader, Abimael Guzmán Reynoso. During these dramatic years, it is sad to say, but this is a fact, 80% of the Peruvians expressed a desire to leave the country, to build a future in other places that could offer them security and a good job to work for the future. The Peruvian societies of the 80s was urban but poor, hardworking but informal, progressive but without opportunities. The typical Peruvian person then was an urban, informal citizen. This character was the survivor of hyperinflation and unemployment that took over the streets. He or she did not trust traditional parties and political institutions and did not feel represented or included by the model of Peruvian state. In 1990, 9 candidates participated in the presidential elections. Well, don't be surprised by the number of candidates. In 2011, there were 11 candidates running for office. At the beginning of the race, there were 2 outstanding candidates, the candidate of the ruling party and the opposition candidate, Mario Vargas Llosa, who today is a Nobel Prize winner in literature. Whoever won would have a difficult task as elected president. The presidential campaign began back in 1990. The novelist was the favorite, but at the end of the race, a stranger changed the political spectrum. This stranger was known only for being the president of the National Agrarian University and the son of Japanese immigrants. After an intense campaign, the unknown former mathematician professor, Alberto Fujimori, my father, defeated the renowned novelist. As you can imagine, the change of government was not enough to stop terrorism or inflation. So my father took very drastic measures. He implemented an economic shock program named by the press as Fuji Shock. And additionally, he faced Sendero Luminoso with a new strategy that included not only the police and the armed forces, but also the participation of the organized rural communities. On September 12, 1992, the fugitive leader of Sendero Luminoso, Abimael Guzmán, was arrested, marking a historical turning point in the fight against terrorism. Today, he is purging a sentence of life imprisonment in a high-security prison. And paradoxically, today, my father is also in prison, serving an unjust sentence for fighting terrorism. But that's another story. The government party at that time, referred to as Fujimorismo, had no majority in Congress. Laws for economic reforms were not being approved. And on top of that, the opposition presented and passed a bill called the Law to Control the Acts of the President of the Republic. With this bill, the opposition had the power to eliminate any decision that the head of state would take, something that would have prevented the success of any president. As a result, a very controversial decision was taken. On April 5th, 1992, my father gave the order to close Congress. This controversial measure was taken by my father, was approved by 85% of the population. But I personally, however, have to say, and I consider this measure unrepeatable. Unrepeatable. After closing Congress, a constituent assembly was called to reestablish democracy and create a new constitution in 1993, which has been maintained until today. This constitution brought change to the country and brought a number of benefits, such as the formation of a new economic model, which led to the appearance of a new social group, the entrepreneurs. People from humble origins wanting to succeed. Opportunities were created. The different strategies of development applied by the different presidents in office since our independence had mainly been based on a nationalist model that promoted a state ownership in the corporate sectors. Proponents of a strong public sector in favor of our economy, directed by the state, fail in their objective of improving the quality of life of lower-income families. In practice, a state presence was expanded to almost all economic sectors and social organizations. Government monopolies were established across several industries, including telephony, electricity, industrial fishing, and oil. The government also owned most of the biggest mining companies and 35% of the commercial banks in the country. All of these companies were bankrupt, filled with corruption, and did not even provide the services to the people. For example, it could take at that time 5 or 7 years just to get a telephone line at home. On the other hand, proponents of private policy approach had a speech in favor of capitalism and the market economy. But in practice, their policies did not promote actually the free market. Instead, they were granting privileges and benefits to business groups who were close to the government. The greatest example was the existence of high tariffs protection in the late 80s. They closed the country's market for certain business groups. The Constitution of 1993 had 3 main objectives. 1, to eradicate violence and establish peace with the presence of the state and its services throughout the country. Number 2, create an inclusive economic model where everyone had the opportunity to succeed with real competition, with equal obligations and rights, and to provide, number 3, tools for the poorest social economic class. This new model generated, as I said before, the rise of entrepreneurs in Peru. Just to give an example, auto imports were now permitted. Before that, only millionaires could have owned a car. Not only that, but those who imported cars found a way also to do their own business. This is the case of our political party General Secretary, Congress member Joaquin Ramirez, who is a 45-year-old businessman who as a child lived in a rural area in a poor town in Cajamarca in the north part of Peru. He traveled to Lima and started working as an assistant, gathered some money, and imported a car, then more cars, then buses and trucks. Today, he's a very successful businessman, and he's a vivid example of a Peruvian entrepreneur. These type of examples occur in many sectors. In terms of initiative to fight poverty, a successful program was the creation of public soup kitchens, also known as comedores populares. The government promoted this program in order to help the poor and extreme poor that in 1991 represented approximately 57% of the population. The program was not only important for the nutrition of the people, but also a way to empower women. In poor and extreme poor families, commonly the husband was the only one who worked. This economic dependence of women kept them in a situation of vulnerability to violence, which is one of the most entrenched powers in our country. Having this in mind, the government decided to promote these social programs and invited women to work in the soup kitchens. With this partnership with the state, women began to be more independent. They no longer would ask for money to their partners to feed the children, and they also started to contributing to the economy of the family as well as men. Today, after 20 years, more than 12,000 community kitchens remain in the country. Each community kitchen is organized and led by a president. Women are grouped in organizations and associations nationwide. They coordinate with the Minister of Women Affairs, deciding how to use all the resources, and they also participate in the distribution process. Some of the pioneers of these programs are now owners of a small restaurants. They represent grassroots organizations, these ladies. They have evolved from being housewives to become leaders in their communities and have gained, of course, a special political power during electoral periods because they're usually the leaders in their communities. Returning to the topic of the economy, Peru became an attractive country for large national and foreign investors. Business opportunities were very abundant. Mining, fishing, the industrial sector all experienced impressive growth. There was security and order, not only in the highlands of Peru, but throughout the whole territory. This economic growth expanded to all segments. A small neighborhood started to have large supermarket chains, which were particularly promoted by the signing of free trade agreements. The most important one of these agreements was the one signed with the United States in 2006. Today, Peru has similar trade agreements with Canada, with the European Union, and with certain countries in Asia. And we are proudly belong to the Asian Pacific Economic Forum and the Alliance of the Pacific. These agreements created opportunities of other type of businesses. Today, Peru is the biggest asparagus exporter and the second exporter of avocado. We're also producing grapes, red pepper, tangerines, and other products, also specialty coffee. Peru is the first producer and exporter of organic coffee in the world, and the leading provider of specialty coffee here in the United States under the label Fair Trade. Our coffee covers 25% of the market in the United States. After gaining peace, Peru has become also an important tourist destination. In 2010, Peru reached 2 million tourists. In 2014, 3.6 million visitors came, whose main attraction, of course, was and is and will be Machu Picchu, one of the 7 wonders of the world. You can arrive to Machu Picchu by helicopter, by train, or hiking. And I know that here in Utah, many of you like to hike the Rocky Mountains. so I'm sure you will be ready to do the 4 days Inca Trail. Little by little, in the middle of the tourist boom and over the years, the Peruvian cuisine has become one of the main attractions. The success of our wonderful dishes comes from amazing ingredients like ají, rocoto, limon, potatoes. But what has made it even better is the addition of techniques that was brought by other immigrants groups. For example, we have a dish called lomo saltado, which contains Peruvian ingredients, but they use the Chinese technique to use the wok. Or we also have tiradito, which is a dish similar to ceviche. But tiradito, it is fish with sashimi cutting with the ceviche sauce. So we have an extraordinary gastronomy, and I have to tell you a secret. That's the way I met and I won the heart and the stomach of my husband, Mark Villanella. Today, our cuisine is considered the best in Latin America, and in 2014, Peru was recognized as the best culinary destination in the world, receiving 2 awards in the global edition of the World Travel Awards: World Leading Culinary Destination and World's Leading Tourism Website. However, this cuisine is also supported by the wonderful biodiversity. As surely you already know, in Peru, our biodiversity is so rich. For example, in the world, there are 5,000 varieties of potatoes. In Peru, we have 3,000. And we have up to 50 varieties of Peruvian chili peppers, the ají, which, as you may know, this is an essential part of the Peruvian cuisine. We have had high recognitions also for fruit, with up to 623 species. Our country is recognized as one of the 10 mega diverse countries worldwide. It is a privilege to have such a variety of flora and wildlife, which is not only a gift nature of Peru, but also a contribution to the world. In the last 20 years, our country has been modernized. It has grown. And as a politician, I have been traveling since I was 19 years old. I traveled as First Lady of my country. I traveled as a Congress member. And then when I had the chance to organize my political party, Fuerza Popular, I witnessed the growth of Peru, but also the needs in the communities. I know the problems of each region, its natural resources, and the will of its people. That is why I also recognize the existence of tensions between the more modern sectors of the economy and the numerous sectors of the population who still do not receive benefits from the open market economy. I know that as a nation, there are still major challenges ahead. It is true that Peru has grown. It is true that the Peru of today is not the same Peru that it was a couple of decades ago. My country has improved very much, but we could do much better. There's still so much more that can be done. The Peru of today has 5 times more annual budget than 20 years ago. But what is the main problem? The money is not very well spent, and sometimes it's not even invested at all. The government lacks an administrative capacity needed to execute much needed reforms and projects. I believe that education is the best tool to provide opportunities for people to reach their dreams. To achieve a high-quality education program signifies not only improving the infrastructure of the schools, but also implementing technology equipment in school system, and also offering training programs to the professors. I also want to place an emphasis on educating children on values, not only through the school system, but involving the most important foundation of the society, the families. I want to work on health services that are provided in a more efficient manner, not only in the large cities, but also in the mountains and the rural area. It is unjust for common citizens to wait sometimes 30 days to receive a medical attention. And when they get the diagnosis, they don't even receive the medicine. Peru was able and proud to defeat terrorism. We now face a large threat, which is the increase of delinquency. Pickpocketing, armed robberies, domestic violence are increasing trends. I am working on a strategy to have safe streets and parks where children, my children, our children would be able to play. I want the youth of my country to believe in their future. The generation of my grandparents and my parents lived a time of great frustration. To me, mother of 2 daughters, I want my children to live in a time of hope. For me, politics is precisely the strength that must hold that hope that could make it a reality. I firmly believe that my country can and should grow much more because of its rich natural resources and its human resources. Peruvians are creative, passionate, talented, resourceful, entrepreneurs. I believe in my people, I believe in my country, and you are all welcome to come to Peru. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Keiko. That was absolutely beautiful and wonderful. What a wonderful, what a perspective of Peru, past, present, and future, and her vision. I just want to, I felt to make one comment when I introduced her. Yesterday, we were at a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor and also with the Attorney General, Jean Reyes, and she made a comment, says, before I launched my campaign, I decided just to do 2 visits to universities. I've been invited to several, but only 2 I have accepted. And one of them is Utah Valley University, and we're so honored to have you with us, and that was absolutely beautiful. And the second university, it's Harvard University. So I was very pleased. It was very pleased to know that now we're being compared to Harvard. So folks, you are at a great institution. Thank you for those wonderful words. Now we're going to do and take a few questions. I have one of my assistants, Elite, or is not working. We're going to try to get this going. Please, if your questions can be brief and direct to the point, so we don't elaborate for hours just on one question, so other individuals may have the opportunity to ask those questions. We would appreciate that. So we will start. We're going to try to get that mic working, but if not, just raise your hand and I'll just pass the microphone to Keiko. Okay. Sí, no. Yeah.
Keiko, thank you so much for coming today and visiting us. I'm from Peru, and I'm a woman, and you're the representation of a powerful, smart, beautiful woman of Peru. I have this question. You mentioned that throughout history, women have been affected and have been vulnerable to violence. So how can we stop that today in Peru? What are some of the strategies you're thinking of can help empower women today?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, Peru, one of the main problems is domestic violence. And I have to admit, there is still some, how do you call machismo? Machismo, in English, okay. There is a little bit of discrimination to women in the private sector and in the public sector as well. I believe the violence will be solved with education And this is something that will take a long time. This is something that we have to teach to children, that boys and girls, men and women, have the same rights. But also there's certain laws and rules that have implemented in Peru in order to promote the participation of women, for instance, in politics. 20 years ago, Congress approved a law of quotas. That means that, for instance, in the list of Congress candidates, at least 30% of the participants have to be women. These have, but not all of them get elected. Of course, the population has the right to choose for which one to vote. But over the years, I have seen with pride that there are more participation of women in politics. Actually, the former mayor of the capital, she's a woman. So this participation obviously promote and inspire more women to take leading roles. But I don't think the law of quotas is enough. I, as president, traveled throughout the country, and last year, for instance, we have regional and municipality elections. And yes, for regidores, for the people that accompany the candidates, you have 30% at least of women participating. But it was sad for me as a woman to see that most of the candidates, especially in the mountain and the jungle, were men. So we still have a challenge as women to promote more participation, because I believe when more women participate in politics, we will introduce this social view that we have as mothers. Thank you.
I have very little connection to Peru. I have read other books talking to me about Peru, and I became very interested in how, as a foreigner, how can I help in any way in the international relations sector. I'm curious what your hope is for foreigners in regards to helping Peru.
My country welcomes and greets foreigners. As I was saying, for instance, in the economy, Peru treats businessmen, foreign businessmen, with the same rights, conditions, and obligations as Peruvians. And it is not a simple law. It is written in the Constitution to guarantee that equal conditions. Because of that, we have been receiving a lot of foreign investments. And this is one of the reasons why 2 years ago I met Baldomero. There was an important mission of Utah business people that went to Peru because they were interested in invest in our country. But that same way we treat tourists, we treat students that come from other countries. Peru is a multicultural, diverse country. And this diversion has influence, as I said in my speech, also in the food and in the traditions. And I am luckily married to a US citizen. Mark is from New Jersey. He's now Peruvian, but he feels at home. He loves it. And there are a lot of foreigners that are coming to Peru. And I know that there are a lot of young people that are going to Peru to do their missions in Trujillo, in Lima, in poor areas. So if you want to come, there are a lot of things to do. You could teach English, you could help poor communities, or eventually you could also marry a Peruvian lady. Yes.
Hello, Keiko. Welcome to Utah. I am also a Peruvian from Lima, Peru. I am a businesswoman here in Utah. And I want to publicly thank you and your father. Because of your father's efforts, I was able to go back to my country after a long wait for 10 years to see my family. I really appreciate it. I'm really thankful for your father for doing that. My question for you is, are you running for president? If you are, we are ready to help you.
Well, thank you. The elections are going to be held next year. In April 2016, it's going to be the first round. And then in the first week of June are the runoffs. Officially, I cannot say it yet, but of course, I've been preparing and I've been strengthening my political parties. In 2011, I was honored as a woman to enter into the runoffs, and I received a very important votation. Actually, the Peruvian community here in Utah in the runoffs, 90% supported me. So that's one of the reasons why I am also here to say thank you. I love politics, and I'm in politics because I want to change my country. And I'm going to keep participating. I don't know how, but I will always work to benefit and to improve my country. The news of when or whether I will run, it will come probably in December. So estén atentos, and please support me from here.
Thank you so much for coming here. I'm Mark Lenz, and I teach Latin American history here, and we finished our section on Peru about 2 weeks ago. And a lot of these questions have looked forward, so I apologize for this one being a little bit looking backward. Obviously, Alberto Fujimori was incredibly popular because he managed to really stop Shining Path in a way that the two previous presidents hadn't. But at the same time, one of the things that I have a real problem explaining to the students is how was Shining Path so widely supported and successful? I guess from your own talk, one of the examples I would think of is how is it that a student who is studying by kerosene light with fear of being bombed, going in some rare cases, but enough cases to keep the movement going, actually going to go out and join Shining Path? That's one of the questions that I hope you could explain to me, because even though I teach Latin American studies, I don't fully understand that even. So, thank you.
Well, it is a difficult question. And for us Peruvian, it was sad to see that among Peruvians, we were killing each other. I don't have the right answer, but let me try to think, because I travel so much throughout the country. One of the reasons why Shining Path was able to grow, I think it was because of poverty, because the really poor conditions that many thousand communities of the country were living in. And the presence of state, there was none. There was no support to the poor communities from the government. So this lack of support, they didn't feel an ally to the government. So for many years, they were abandoned, and they had no other choice that sometimes by force, they had to feed people, or by force, they have to let their children go to enroll Sendero Luminoso. But when they changed the strategy of not only confronting them with the policemen or the armed forces, but by bringing the community together, by using the organized community to be part of this fight against terrorism, things change. And I think the projects, the little projects that were developed and built, especially in these poor communities, help the state to gain the communities as allies. And now that we see the past, we value the peace that we live in. We still have to go through a reconciliation process. We still have a lot of hills that Peruvians need to work on in order to work on a most united country. Thank you. The lady first, okay.
Ladies first.
We're so grateful to be here today. And I'm from Peru as well. We were we have a political asylum. We actually left Peru when I was like 17 years old. My heart is in Peru. I'm Peruvian and I love my country. I'm so thankful for your dad. He was the best president of my country, Peru. And my question for you is, what can we do to help from here, being a Peruvian, the freedom, your dad? How can we help for President Fujimori, or what's the situation right now for him to be able to be freedom? You know, it's so sad for us to see him, you know, like that. And you know, and what can we do from here, living out of Peru, helping your dad?
Thank you for your kind words. Yes, I receive a lot of solidarity for the situation of my father. His health is a little bit unstable, but I have to say that emotionally he's very strong. It is a difficult situation for the family. He has been in prison 7 years in Peru. But as president of the party, I have to tell you that the freedom of my father is seen and taken care from the family, not from the political party. We will not use any political measures to free my father. We have decided as a family, including my father, that we will use only the legal and constitutional ways, and we're still fighting for his freedom. And thank you so much for your support, and maybe at 7 p.m. we could talk and we could give you a lot of more information of how can you, as a citizen, could support the freedom of my father. But as I said before, his freedom will be fight through the family, not to the political party. We have even made a decision, for instance, 2 months ago there were rumors and speculations that we could present a law to benefit men that are above or older than 75 years old to pass the prison in a home. And since this is a project that could benefit my father, we have decided not to present it. It is difficult, but I want everybody to know that I want to be president of my country to serve my country.
Keiko, thank you. It's un poco fuerte. Thank you for coming. I know that obviously Peru, it's a little far away, so thank you for coming here to Provo, Utah. First and foremost, I'm really interested in international relations and studying communications as well. So I've heard a little bit and I've had a chance to just do a little research about yourself and about your father. And at the same time, what I heard, and I'm interested, I'll keep my remarks brief, but I'm interested in hearing your opinion on kind of 3 yes or no questions, I guess, and 3 points that I just wanted to briefly mention. According to a few sources that I've read, your father actually is also known as the 7th most corrupt individual in the world and is known for desviando $600 million from Peru. And I know that this country, there's a lot of pobreza, there's a lot of poor people in Peru. And so to me, I just want to understand, and I also know that he was put in jail on counts of violation of human rights and a lot of corruption. So that's my first point. And my second point is also, I know your brother is recently being investigated for having cocaine, about 80 kilograms, if I'm not mistaken, in his office. And then other people as well, congressmen and congresswomen in your political party are also being investigated for drug trafficking. And I know you talked a little bit about the future of your country and just making sure that doesn't happen. And then my third point also is I've also read in various sources that you haven't had any labor experience. And so I'm interested in hearing your kind of goals as president and your aspirations for president without having that labor experience.
Okay. Thank you very much for your questions, because it's an opportunity for me to clarify certain legends and misinformations about my family. There was a huge campaign of accusations against my family about corruption. And they even hire a company, an international company, what is the name? Kroll Company, which is very well known for doing this type of investigation throughout the world. And Kroll Company investigated my father, my family, throughout the world, and they did not find absolutely anything illegal. And because if they found something illegal or corrupt against my father, believe me that not even 1% of the population will vote for me or my political party. In the case of my brother, he has a logistic and storage company in Peru. They actually partner with the biggest Japanese company. So they are part of an international huge company that manage logistics and exportation. As any other logistic company, they face problems with drug dealers because Peru, yes, unfortunately, is the biggest exporter of cocaine right now. But my brother is not investigated. Actually, the company made the denunciations in the police in order to do a deep investigation of the company that wanted to export these products. And in terms of the people that are working in my party, there are always speculation. And when you are in politics, you receive all type of attacks, all type of lies. But they're not true. And because of that, my party is considered the strongest, the best party, and it is #1 in the polls. And as Baldomero said, in the past 3 years, Peruvian citizens are supporting myself. I was able to enter into the runoffs in 2011 with 25%, and right now the polls shows that 35% of the people are supporting Fuerza Popular. My experience as a professional, I am a business administrator from Boston University. I did my master's degrees at Columbia Business School. I work in GM Asset Management, and I was able to serve my country as Congress member. I worked as a Congress member for 5 years. I was elected with the highest number of votes in history of my country. And I received a lot of support in the 2011 election. Right now, I work as president of my political party. I dedicate full time on it. I travel throughout my country, and I travel sometimes abroad to give conference like I do today. So I am prepared to be president, and I'm gonna win next election.
I am from Cusco, and I am grateful that you're showing Machu Picchu and all our culture to everybody. Thank you very much. The current administration in Peru made some statements that threaten the religion freedoms of the Mormon Church. So I would like to know what is your position about religion freedoms.
Well, I am Catholic, but I'm very respected of different religions, different customs, traditions that we have in Peru. The Mormon Church, it is very important in Peru. And I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of the young people go to Peru to do the missions. And I think this is a great opportunity for our country to receive all these youth, jóvenes that come to Peru. We are so open to different type of customs and religions that in our party, we have, for instance, 2 pastors from the Evangelic Church that are Congress member right now. We have a friend here who belongs to the Mormon Church, and he was the candidate with our political party for Arequipa. And we have also a lot of Catholic members. But the government of Peru is laico, no? It's non-religion. And what they have to respect is the freedom of religion, and that's the way I believe.
Hi, my name is Carla Pintado. My family and I were Fujimoristas at heart. We, you might not know this, but my parents know your mother. Like so many years ago, they rented one of their buildings, her buildings in Avenida Grau in La Victoria. They are doctors, and they have been helping your political party. I am very sad. I am a Peruvian living in the States for a few years now. I'm very sad about what's happening to your father, and the same thing, I already heard what you have said, but I'm gonna ask again, like as she said, if there is anything that we can do to help your father get out. There are many of us that are ashamed that this is happening, because thanks to your father, their terrorism was eradicated. We are not seeing any more car bombs and living that life that I left so many years ago. It was really hard, but I also wanted to ask you about if there is anything like that we can do, and if there are some plans for opening a political party over here to help Peru. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know it is a difficult situation, and thank you for all your solidarity. But I learned to use the difficult problems and the challenges into a positive way. So although my father does not have the freedom, I ask him sometimes, do you regret by leaving Japan? And he says no. Because he has the opportunity to be near the family, to be able to see how his grandchildren growing, and to see how his political party that was founded by him 25 years ago and now presided by me is still in the heart of Peruvians. So we have to see things from a positive way. And we have to gain this energy, inside energy of us, to continue working for the benefits of our country. Thank you so much for the words that you have about my mother. My mom was a Congress member, but they were divorced 25 years ago. So my mom belonged to a different political party. So because of that, the children, we learn to debate, to be more tolerant, and to be able to talk about politics, even with my mom, which we have a different point of view, but with a lot of respect. And that's what we have to build, respect, and to be tolerant to the ones that maybe think different. I regret that the guy that had difficult questions have left, because it will be more democratic for him to hear me and then jump into conclusions. But I am a Democrat. I believe in democracy, I believe in debating, and I believe that sometimes people have different points of views. And if you want to help support my father, come at 7 p.m., maybe we could have some ideas. And yes, I am planning to form a base here of Fuerza Popular in Utah.
Hi, I'll be brief. I was just curious what your stance was on the legislation that was passed in the 90s regarding forced sterilization of women in the jungle and in the mountain areas of Peru.
In terms of health reproduction plan, let me go back a little bit. In 1996, my father was one of the few male presidents that attended the Beijing Conference of Women Affairs. In that conference, most of the countries that were participating agree to educate women to have the decision of how many children they could have and when to have it. Because of that, in Congress, it was passed a law in order to have this reproductive health program throughout the country in order to teach women and to let them have the decision, as I said before, how and when and how many children to have. During this process, there were few doctors that did not respected the steps of asking the person, of asking the woman, whether she wanted to have the surgery or not. There has been 4 investigations in the post-governments after my father that have entered into the conclusion that it's the responsibility of certain doctors, but not the government, for these few women that were operated without their consentment. The campaign against me, they said there was 300,000 ladies. It is not true. About 800,000 people received the information, and only 13% of the ladies decided to have surgery. There were 300 women that make a denuncia, that make an accusation against the doctors. 30 of the women were found to have problems. And I strongly believe that the doctors, the professionals that made those mistakes have to be punished. I am a woman and I'm a mother of 2, and I don't think something like this should ever happen again.
Hello, my name is Paul. I'm from Peru too. I just want to thank you and your father for the things you have done for our country. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to those Pueblos Jóvenes, and with my father, under the Foncodes program, to deliver breakfast to those kids. Nobody talks about that, but I remember going with my dad when I was 8 and to those towns. But my question is, you talk about, I guess my question is, how can you reduce the crime in Peru? I'd seen many news that talks about how crime in the streets, especially in the streets, how do you plan to stop the crime in the streets again?
Actually, it is a problem that is affecting Mexico, that's affecting Colombia, and it is complicated in Peru because it involves many institutions. I believe that in order to solve the problems, we have to work in an integral strategy that has to come first with strengthening the police institution in Peru, but also fighting corruption in the Ministerio Público, under attorney's institution, and the justice system. Because what happens sometimes in my country is that policemen capture a delinquent, but at the end, because of corruptions, they ended up free. Or even worse, sometimes they go to prison, but within the prisons, the delinquents, the mafias, plan also inside of the prisons the kidnaps of the people. So it is a problem that, as I said before, has to do with many institutions. We've been working, and last election, Mayor Giuliani came to support my campaign. This is something that we've been working on. We have a technical strategy. We have a good team of people that during the campaign, of course, I'm gonna explain to the people. But it has to come with political decision, with a strong decision in order to be able to solve this. Because right now, people are scared again in my country. We were living in peace, and because of this, we are afraid sometimes to go on the streets. We are afraid that the children are playing there, and I don't want this to happen.
Lady.
Thank you. Last question?
Okay.
Yes?
Last question.
I think there was a lady on the back. Oh, here? Okay.
Oh, hi, I'm Cecilia. I have a question about tuberculosis. I just did research about MDR tuberculosis, and I was wondering how you plan to fight tuberculosis, yeah, and then how do you plan to work? How do you want to fight chronic diseases like cardiovascular diseases and heart diseases? Because what I see is in Peru, health, doctors and are having a hard time working with people that have tuberculosis. And I was wondering, what are your plans for it? How to fight, like, that kind of diseases?
Could you rephrase a little bit? Sorry, the question.
The question is like, how do you plan to fight tuberculosis?
Tuberculosis, okay. Yes, Peru is one of the few countries in the world that still have that problem. Unfortunately, last year, the government made the mistake of not buying the rapid test that we should always have in the country in order to control and to be able to eradicate it. Actually, yesterday, in the cocktail done by Science Bank, I was able to meet one of the companies that are selling these products in different other countries. So what I'm gonna do, I'm the opposition leader, but I'm going to put this company in touch with the government because I believe that this problem have to be controlled and have to be eradicated. And in order to be eradicated, we need at least to have the rapid test to know who are the persons that are still have this illness, to be able to avoid in the future others to have this disease. And in terms of health services, Peru is now going through a decentralization process. That means that the regions are in charge of education and health services. I believe in decentralization because it makes the public services closer to the people. But unfortunately, in Peru, decentralization process has not been standardized. So there have certain regions that you have a very good president of the region that has worked on improving the quality of education and is working on providing good health services. But it's not the case in the rest of the country. So this is something that we have to work on standardizing our process, on working closer to the professionals, because some of them, they earn, one doctor that studied 8 years, some of them earn like, I don't know, $1,700 per month, which is ridiculous. They don't even have sometimes the tools to perform surgeries. I have visited many hospitals in Peru, and I remember the last visit in Trujillo, in Gran Chimú, in La Libertad, sorry, in Gran Chimú, in Cascas, in the mountain. The doctors asked me to enter, and I saw an abandoned place, something that was tearing apart, and everything was extremely old and dirty. This cannot happen. So I think when the regional governments don't take the responsibility, somebody has to do it. And the responsibility has to come with the Minister of Health, that they have to supervise and make sure, because today we have the money, we have the budget, but we don't have efficiency, and we don't have executive people that are making sure that the services are delivered. I think it's about time. thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much for being here today. I got to know a little bit more about Utah, and I think you got to know a little bit better about me. Thank you.